Hello everyone. Today we're going to explain you our timeline. Our team is composed of America Ansua, Erika Carranza, Serena Castillo, Luz Cruz, Devani Venegas, and Valeria Villarreal.
Okay, starting with the first topic, they are the vocabulary words, which are universe, evolution, cells, mutations, geologic eras, taxonomy, um, natural selection, and domain. And into the first topic of the book, which is the theories of the origin of the universe. The first theory, which is the Big Bang theory, hypothesizes that all of the current and past matter in the universe came into existence at the same time, around 40 billion years ago. And at this time, all matter was compacted into a very small ball with infinite density and intense heat. Suddenly, the singularity began expanding, and the universe as we know it began. This theory was suggested by George Lemaitre in 1927. Next, the theory of the oscillating universe. It's a modification of the Big Bang theory and proposes that at some moment the attraction of the force of gravity will be greater than the impulse force resulting from the explosion. Therefore, the universe will stop its expansion and collapse back to its starting point. This theory was derived by Alexander Friedman in 1922. The theory of the stationary state states that the universe is always expanding but maintaining a constant average density, with matter being continuously created to form new stars and galaxies at the same rate that old ones become unobservable. This was elaborated by Fred Hoyle, Hermann Bondi, and Thomas Gold in 1948. The last theory is the theory of the inflationary state, which is an addition to the Big Bang theory to solve some of its problems, and proposes a period of extremely rapid exponential expansion of the universe during its first few moments. And this theory was proposed by Alan Guth in 1981. Now into the history of the universe, or our universe began in a tremendous explosion known as the Big Bang, which we talked about already. The first stars, called population 3 stars, were much bigger and brighter than any in our nearby universe. They began to burn close to one another in large litters, which gave rise to the first galaxies, and the force of gravity managed to retain the galaxies in large clusters.
Next, we have life's origin in the point of view of chemical evolution. We have two scientists, Harold Urey and Stanley L. Miller. They invented a system of tubes isolated from the exterior to simulate the hydrosphere, an atmosphere of primitive Earth. One premise of the heterotroph hypothesis was proven. There was a constant process of chemical evolution of reduced inorganic matter, which gave place to the organic molecules. Then we have Juan Oro. Then we have Juan Oro, who synthesized adenine, one of the four constituent bases of nucleic acids, working with hydroionic acid. From formaldehyde was obtained the sugar called ribose. This allows us to think that chemical evolution in abiotic conditions may continue beyond the first observed results and produce many more compounds. Soon a great diversity of organic compounds were produced using models of the Miller-Urey type.
Now let's talk about the biologic evolution. If we had to take a decision about the molecules with which life initiated, based on their biologic functional capabilities, we will have to choose the nucleic acids. For the initial organic molecules to transfer into more complex molecules with properties of life, a process must take place based on natural selection. Molecules are required to have individual variation and equally important. That they can create copies of itself. This variation is due to the mutations. In 1916, Alexander Rich, Carl Woese, Leslie Orgel, and Francis Crick, independently, they proposed the existence of first biologic work based on the RNA molecules, a world of transition between organic matter and the first cells, between life and non-life. The RNA molecules store genetic information, catalyze biochemical reaction, and polymerize, making replicas of themselves. In a subsequent phase, the cell found a way to create and store in the genetic repertory proteins and enzymes. The stability of double helix of DNA allowed for a greater fidelity in the replication of the genome, resulting in fewer mutations and less genetic damage. All genes were reconverted to DNA codifying enzymes as biological catalyzers. All this hypothetical recounting may have taken place in a period of 10 million years or less. Once the first bacteria appeared, the diversification of the biologic evolution gave rise to a great variety of life forms. Now, let's talk about the life on Earth and the change that took place. If we have to talk about the change that took place on the Earth, it's important to mention the eons and the geological eras. We have 11 periods, 6 eras, and 5 eons. The first eon is the Hadean, where the Earth and the solar system originated. The second one is the Archean, the end of the large meteors falling and the most ancient sedimentary rocks. In these eons, the world of RNA takes place. Next, the next eon is the Proterozoic, which its first era is the Paleoproterozoic. In this era, the ozone layer is formed and intense global glaciation takes place. The next era is the Mesoproterozoic, which is its description is that the appearance of multicellularity in algae takes place. Now, the other era is the Paleozoic, which have the period of Cambric. And this period, the explosion of the Cambric takes place. This explosion is the origin and the diversification of almost all lineage of modern animals. The other period is the Ordovician. Sorry. Here the invertebrate marine animals appear. The next period is the Silurian. The fishes appear. And the other is the Devonian, where the vascular plants appear and amphibians appear and insects diversify. Now, the other period is the Carboniferous, where the reptiles appear, and the other one period is Permian, where the Pangea is formed. In this period, the origin of dinosaurs takes place. Now we have the next era, which is the Mesozoic. The first period of this Mesozoic era is the Triassic, where the large aquatic reptiles appear. The next period is the Jurassic, where large subtropical forests of conifers, ferns, and kites appear. The other period is the Cretaceous, where the Pangea fragments. This one is very important because the rise of plants with flowers and their associations of pollinations with insects appears. In this period takes place the extinction of a large dinosaurs and large reptiles. And then we have the last era where we are, or era, which is the Cenozoic. This one have two periods. The first one is the Tertiary, where the continents reach a configuration similar to the current one, and the period called Quaternary, where the succession and diversification of the species of the human family appears, and the last regional glaciations occurs.
Now we're going to see the evolution, history, and evidences of evolution. What is evolution? This term is used to refer to a series of natural processes that contribute, on one hand, to change the genetic characteristics of species and lead them to continually adapt to the variable environment conditions, or inclusively to become extinct when the species don't possess enough variation to respond to drastic changes. We're going to see now the history of this evolution. Until the 18th century, the naturalists that study animals and plants attribute the diversity of species in the world allegedly to an event of divine creation. Carolus Linnaeus, creationist and physicist, he accepted that a new species of plants with fully differentiated distinct characteristics could appear as time went by following sexual crossing. This term is known also as a hybrid. George Louis Leclerc, first one to abandon physicism and think of a true morphologic transformation of a species, he thought that there were three causes by which species could be modified: the diet, the climate, and customs. Lamarck, to him, the three supposedly modifying influences of Leclerc were the cause that laterally diverted the hypothetical progressive progress of increase in the organic and structural complexity of living beings, which he called the march of nature. The last one, we have Charles Darwin with his natural selection, an environment mechanism external to living things that preserves the organisms that are not more apt in struggle for existence. Last one, we have the evidences. The most basic evidences are the fossils. The procedure consists of carrying out a detailed anatomical comparison between the characteristics of extinct and modern species.
Now we're going to see evolution theories based on natural selection. So first we have Charles Darwin. He made a lot of travels through Argentina and Galapagos Islands, and then with his observations, the idea of natural selection just came to him. This theory said that all species were different and needed to compete among themselves for food, and only the ones with superior characters would survive, inheriting their characteristics to their offsprings, and eventually the whole species will be replaced by the descendants best adapted to that way of life. The theory explained the adaptation of species to the environment. Then we have Alfred Wallace. Wallace reported that occasionally individuals would appear with traits different to those of its species, and if these traits were better to obtain food, then they could enter into advantageous competition against individuals without changes. And in the summer of 1855, Wallace told this idea to Darwin in a letter, who hurried to finish the book he had begun, and 2 months later, both Darwin and Wallace's ideas remained known to the scientific community of London. And this is how Darwin ended up writing The Origin of Species, published in the beginning of 1859.
Well, now we have taxonomy, purposes, classification, and the 5 kingdoms. Taxonomy is the most ancient discipline of biological science. This science deals with the principles, methods, and purposes of classification for the hierarchical and systematic ordering of the groups of animals and vegetables. The purpose of taxonomy is to order and classify biological species to form inclusive groups, always based on the peculiarities of their homologous characters. Biologists who cultivate this discipline are called taxonomists, and they are specialists in the morphology, organic functions, habits, geographic distribution, and other aspects of the species of living beings of one or more biological groups. The different systems of classification were created by Aristotle, Lamarck, and Carlos Linneo. Aristotle created the first scientific classification system. He ordered the diversity of known animals into two large groups, Inamos, that is with red blood, and Anamos, no red blood, but with similar fruits of other colors. Then we have Lamarck, created with his classification based on the presence or absence of a vertebral column and skull. Vertebrates with red blood and invertebrates with blood of other colors. Also, in the Middle Age, the classification of animals and plants had a practical or utilitarian bias. There were catalogs of animals called bestiaries that arranged the species alphabetically, and as Latin was replaced by vulgar languages in the early modern nations. Then we have Carlos Linneo. He sorts the species into hierarchical or descending taxonomic categories. At the beginning, they were kingdom, class, order, genus, and species. Later, two intermediate categories were included: family between order and genus, and the phylum between kingdom and class. Also, he established Latin as the languages to name species.
Now we will see this table about the 5 kingdoms of life. Firstly, Haeckel in 1866, he created the 3 kingdom system: the Protists kingdom, the Plantae kingdom, and the Animalia kingdom. Then Edward Charon in 1925 classified biodiversity under a different assumption from that of the kingdom. The criteria that he used was the presence or absence of the nucleus in the cell. He called eukaryotes the cells with a true nucleus and prokaryotes to cells without a true nucleus. Then Herbert Copeland in 1939 separated the bacteria from the protists, creating for them the 4th kingdom of cells without the organelles. This kingdom is the Monera. Then Robert Whittaker in 1959 formalized the 5th kingdom of life, which he named fungi. Carl Woese in 1977, he enriched the classification scheme with the 3 categories superior to the kingdom, which he called domains, like the Archaea domain, Bacteria domain, Eukarya domain. And lastly, Lynn Margulies and Caroline Schwartz in 1998, they created the category called super kingdoms, like the prokaryotic super kingdom. Then is the Monera or bacteria kingdom that divides in the subkingdom Eubacteria and the subkingdom Archaeobacteria. We have also the super eukaryotic kingdom that has the Protists or Proctist kingdom and divides and the Plantae kingdom and Fungi kingdom. This will be all for the timeline. Thank you for paying attention.